Okay, here we go on part three. This one involves painting the water in the channel behind the ferry, as well as the ferry itself. And I never was happy with the color that I put down as a base for the water in the channel, and I've come up with a mixture I think works. And what I try and do in this process is when I look at something with variable shades of a predominant blue, for example, as this is, I look for the lightest value that I can identify. I look to see what that is composed of, and I try to recreate that lightest value. And where there's white, I must leave it alone. And in this case, there is very little white. There's only a little bit down by the ferry where it's kicking up some foam. But there are some very light values as this sets in, even though the paper's wet here and everything looks very wet, and it's going to be looking kind of dark. It dries pretty light. So this is a very light value I'm putting in, and I do it overall. It doesn't have to be completely uniform, although when you brush this kind of thing in with water, you want to make certain that you're going horizontally, you're not going at angles, and you're pulling straight across your paper. Otherwise, it'll destroy the perspective. And then what I'm doing here is adding a little more Prussian, a little deeper tone, and I think I mentioned the combination here is Prussian and cerulean throughout in the water, just different values of that mixture. I'm not trying to be too brush heavy here. I'm trying to just touch it in. The paper's really wet, and I have to wait a while to allow the paper to dry so that I can come back in with a dry brush kind of pulled to a chisel edge and create some light streaks across through the water for reflections and to create a little bit of the current, and you can see the trail of the ferry in the water as it kind of swings into the landing, and you can see what it's done to disrupt the surface. So there's a bunch of disruption around the base of the ferry and much deeper tones, and just touching in some real direct heavy Prussian blue over the mixture that I have down. Probably already noticed how many times my back of my head's been in this thing, and I do that frequently in my videos, and it bothers me, but I'm just going to have to come up with a new location and a slightly different angle for my camera. It's kind of awkward as it is because I just about need a stool to climb up on to reach it, and then since I'm fiddling with the camera quite a lot, it's very inconvenient. So I haven't really found a place within reach that I can put it that it doesn't interfere, or my head doesn't interfere. And I'm constantly leaning into the painting and so on, and like in this shot, which I will correct. It's about time anyway. I don't know how many videos I've done where I've had my fat head disrupt things. So what I just did there, see, I have a chisel point on my brush that's dry, and I'm picking up some of the pigment as I pull across the paper. The paper's still pretty wet, so what looks very like a white line initially is going to soften, and it just reveals a lighter value of the blue beneath. And there are places where I want to make sure the water looks continuous behind the ferry, so I have to paint just right through some of the apparatus on top, some of the antenna and part of the cabin that's up there. So I continue to kind of pick up a little bit of moisture, very light touch. I'm not trying to leave brush marks. The paper's still wet enough where they kind of fade away. But it's just almost ideal at this point of its drawing that for cleaning a brush and creating a chisel edge and then going back into the work and lifting just with a very light touch. You can lift and you'll create a lighter value, so you're actually painting in reverse to a degree. You're taking away pigment. I don't want to do too much because I know this is going to dry and appear quite light. So I am not going to be attempting to, go over every inch of it this way. I want to leave some of that pigment settle in. Now as I go down to the ferry, the water right next to it and more in the foreground, I'm going to be using more pigment in it. Some of it's just going to be almost direct out of the tube Prussian, much deeper value. And then again, creating a chisel edge and showing where the ferry is actually creating a little disruption in the water, some foam, some white water from the props, and also they're putting on some reverse there, so it kind of disrupts the surface. That's going to create some white water, and we're going to get right down next to the pier. I'm just picking up a little bit of extra water that's run out onto the tape. And make sure your tapes are, for doing something that's wet, make sure your tapes are really well secured. And this frog tape seemed to hang in there really well. So this doesn't look like much at this point, but it does come around. And I play with it a little bit more, but you have to be careful that you're not overworking it. And just when you see something that has potential and you think you might like it, just try to stay away from it. My tendency is to, oh, I like that, and then I start playing with it, and then I wreck it. So if you see something drawing in that looks good and you're not sure, you're better off not doing anything with it. You can always come back later, but you don't want to ruin a good thing. So my next step in this process now then will be to identify that signature green that we see on the Washington State ferries. And I'll go into that in depth in a few. Thanks. So I'm getting ready here to do that iconic Washington Ferry green, and I've got a test paper here that I've experimented with, and I have a number of greens on here, and they include viridian, cobalt, chromium oxide, magnesium, phthalo. I also had olive green, sap green, hooker's green. There's a lot of them. And one thing you keep in mind when you're experimenting with these different colors, that different manufacturers have different looking uh, colors for different names, like cobalt. Cobalt is not all created equal, neither is magnesium, and you might have to find a manufacturer that gives you the best option. This test strip here includes a bunch of combinations and things I tried, like cerulean with yellow, pale yellow, Prussian, and cobalt together, trying to create a mix that way. I tested a bunch of browns. There's a lot of little experiments on here, but what it came down to, in essence, was a combination of cobalt and magnesium. And at times I would want pretty much a straight from the tube type of mix, and other times I would tone it down with a little bit of Payne's gray if I wanted to make it much darker and deeper, like in a shadow, or just very dilute if I want maybe more, a little bit more magnesium in the light. And I wanted to get this green right. It's shown on the side of the boat and a bunch of other places, including a little bit on the roof. So this is all about playing around with my experiments, but I finally did arrive that it was those two colors primarily, and so I shall press on. There is some masking remaining around the perimeter of the ferry, but that's going to be removed shortly. Just putting in the color fairly wet so that it can be overlaid with another application to get the color right. It doesn't have to be completely flat and even, and I like some variation in it, depending on how much light it's reflecting. It reflects a little bit off the water too. So this band is kind of going to extend all the way around the ferry, and it's up on the stacks on the top of the boat and a few other places. And this part of the painting is really like drawing with paint. I'm using a pretty small brush at this point, and it goes down as far as a number 2 liner. This one isn't quite that small, but I do get into some small details that require kind of a slow down and a light touch. And you'll see I'll move up to the top, and this will be sped up because it took me forever. And part of the reason for that is I want it to be accurate, because the people that know these ferries well, they're going to look at these details for accuracy. And I've met a few, and they're particular, and I don't blame them. But when I get to the top, it occurred to me how difficult it is to paint something that you're not totally familiar with. And I try to get as many resource photos as possible, but I didn't really zoom in on a lot of things, and there's a few things I wasn't quite sure what they were. And if you don't know what something is, you can see its form, but it's much harder to paint if you're not, just intimately familiar with it. Things that we encounter constantly all the time, we can do them by memory, but something that has a lot of mechanical features, for example, like this boat. If you don't know how they work, you don't know what they're for exactly, it makes it a lot tougher. So I did get on the Google Images and look for better details than what I had in my collection, and it helped me out in places. So as I said, I'll be speeding it up, and I'll throw in some music, and you can watch me struggle. But I was happy with my results, and I'm worked my way all the way through the upper section, and now I'm getting into the car deck, and in the next release, and I'll be doing some people standing around, and that'll be fun. But hope you enjoy the remainder of this, and show you how I approach working in details for something that's this specific.
There is a place I used to know. I held it tight, then I let it go. I put up my hand to wave goodbye. Then I turn around, everything's alright. They're saying nobody pay attention to my footsteps. But if they find a prison to hold me, I'd escape to tomorrow, and I'm going away. Need to find out on my own outside the grave. But right now I got no one to obey but myself. Whoa. But if I find a world I can live in, then I'll it.